Hello, hola, good day, mate. My friends, welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. If you don't know me, I'm Kelly Tolliday, host of the podcast here. I'm also a travel advisor and a retreat facilitator, and I wanted to hop on before the episode begins and just say a quick hi, a little check-in. How are we all feeling? How are we all doing? We're almost halfway through October, which is honestly just wild to me. And we're almost towards the end of the year. Can we just take a quick minute and check in with ourselves? Like maybe do a quick scan of the year that you've had so far, the adventures, the trips, the heartache, the challenges, the joy. Man, like you've been through so much, and truly the best is yet to come. I hope you can honestly really feel that in your bones. The best is yet to come. No matter what you've been through, really truly believing that there is good coming your way. And I say this as today's episode launches because we have Susan Winograd on the pod today to discuss pelvic health and how it relates to travel. And you might be like, WTF, why do we have a pelvic health expert coming on a podcast about travel? And I say this because for those that are dealing with conditions or symptoms or just like pesky issues that might be related to pelvic health, it can be really hard to feel optimistic about the future, especially when it comes to travel. I mean, many of us have had children, and we all know what happens to our pelvic health during that time. Or perhaps we're older in age and some pesky symptoms are starting to creep their way into your day-to-day life, and it's actually holding us back from living our best lives. Susan talks about how our health directly impacts the choices and even the adventures that we say yes to. I mean, think about it. So if you're worried about being able to control your bladder for a long time, you might not say yes to that trip to Australia because the flight is too long. I mean, what? Like, that's so crazy to think how something seemingly so unrelated can actually affect our travels and affect us living our best life. So she deep dives into what pelvic health is, how it can affect your day-to-day life, how it can affect your travels, things that you can do to improve your pelvic health. And it's not just related to the pelvis, like it's your shoulder, it's your back, it's everything, it's your digestion. And she also deep dives into holistic approaches to health and how she incorporates her daily health routines into her travels. So she feels her absolute best not only on her trip, but also as she comes home, which is super important because it'll help us combat that post-trip anxiety, those post-trip blues that we might feel. If we're taking care of ourselves while on our trip, we're actually able to really mitigate some of that anxiety that we feel coming back home from a vacation. So this is honestly, truly such a special episode with a very special human, so near and dear to my heart. And I am just excited to share and you guys to learn so much. And if you love it too, please share this episode with a friend, your mom friend in the group chat, your uncle who lives a couple states away, your sister, your loved ones, literally anyone and everyone, your boss. Anyone can benefit from this conversation. And make sure to stay tuned because later on in the show, I'm going to actually give a shout out to a client of mine who has recently gave feedback from a trip that she took, which I helped plan for her. So if you want to hear a little bit about how someone feels who goes on a trip with me or goes on a trip that I plan, at least I should say. Stay tuned for that. And I will see you on the other side, my friend. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Tolliday. I am the founder of Transform with Travel, where we curate tailor-made travel experiences through travel planning and advising services, as well as the co-founder of R&R, where we offer group retreats and tours around the world. You can check out all the links in the show notes. Before we begin, I would love if you could click subscribe to the podcast right now. That way you will never miss a new episode. And trust me, as we head into year 2 of the podcast, you do not want to miss a single episode. We have an amazing lineup of guests, including today's guest, who is an extra special friend of mine. So drum roll, please. Welcome to Susan Winograd.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm happy to
And
have you
yes,
here. So
you are a very special friend, Kelly. So this is an extra special podcast guest slot for me to be on.
Oh, I'm so happy. So, Susan and I met in 2023 through an organization called the Daily Drip, and we are both contributing writers in our respective fields as well as thought leaders for the organization. So, huge shout out to the Daily Drip, Nicole, Romy, the whole team. Romy was actually on the podcast as well, I believe, episode 33. So, if you're keen to hear more, go ahead and listen. And I have developed such an immense respect for you, Susan, and the work that you do as the founder of Pelvic Rehab and Wellness, specializing in women's health, men's health issues, and pre and postnatal care, menopause health, digestive, bowel, bladder, and sexual issues. Susan is on the pod today to talk about all things health and wellness, as well as pelvic health, which is not something we talk a lot about in terms of travel, but something that is deeply impacted while we travel. And we're going to talk about all those things related to pre-travel, during travel, post-travel, and how we can really feel at our best through it all. So thank you, Susan, for joining me today.
I'm so excited. And I think this is going to be a great conversation because pelvic health is something that a lot of people don't think about with travel, but can have a huge impact on travel. So just being a little bit proactive in your thought process can make a huge difference in your experience. So I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if we could touch on that, like your journey to holistic health and why you are so passionate about helping others improve their health and lives through your chosen modality.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of us that have chosen this path, Kelly, have done so because of a personal story.
Mm,
So, I have four children. Well, I have four children that I gave birth to, and I have two children that came in by marriage and another one that's coming in by marriage in December. So, I want to count them in, and I have two delicious grandchildren now. But I really did the work in order to get them here because my pregnancies were not easy. After I had my fourth child, my OBGYN looked at me and she's like, "We're not going to do this again, are we?"
mm,
Because I had a really, really challenging experience. And with every pregnancy, I had a new set of challenges that sort of seemed new for every doctor that I had been to. And no one really knew how to deal with me. And I know that in retrospect, I know that had I had a good pelvic health physical therapist on my team, my entire experience would have been different. So it really, really started 25 years ago. And I decided to just do pelvic health about 10 years ago. And that really, really changed my life because what I always tell people is I started diving into pelvic health. They gave me the courses I took, gave me the Kool Aid, and I have not stopped drinking that Kool Aid because it is the most fascinating field. It is so diverse, encompasses every system in the body, every muscle in the body. And it really, I believe we're doing life changing work. So I believe that being a pelvic health and wellness physical therapist is part of my purpose on this earth. So
mm.
I just started with my own journey, and the more I learn, the more passionate I become about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I can say from my own personal experience working with a pelvic health physical therapist, I remember the first time laying on the table and she was working on my shoulder. And I was like, wait, I thought we were here for pelvic health. And she's like, I know. It's all related and it's incredible.
I'm so happy that you had that experience because what I always tell people is if you have a pelvic floor physical therapist that only looks at your pelvis, then you really need to start looking for a new one. It should be a whole body experience. I've had clients that have come to me presenting with pelvic pain, and I'll treat their ribs, I'll treat their jaw, I'll treat their feet. So we have to start thinking in healthcare, right? I really view myself as a paradigm shifter. And we have to start remembering that the origin of pain could be at a distant site from where we feel the pain. And unless we start treating that origin, we're never going to resolve and get long term results because if we're just putting a band aid on things, we're not going to get the answers that we want.
Yeah, 100%. And so with pelvic core rehab and wellness, you do obviously physical therapy, but you also have a load of different modalities and practitioners involved. And you mentioned this term whole body approach, this whole body wellness. How do you think having all these different amazing practitioners under one roof, how do you think that really supports your clients?
Well, I'm starting to believe that it should be the only way that we do support clients, because I can tell you that clients that have come to us, if you can, not everybody has the ability to do that, but I will say that the reason my practice evolved that way is because I realized that my clients needed more support in one place. First of all, just to backtrack a little bit, I think we all start as musculoskeletal physical therapists. My practice has evolved because I have had the greatest honor to cross paths with other therapists that have been my greatest mentors, who have taught me that we cannot only treat the musculoskeletal system. When we're trying to get people healthy, we have to treat the whole body and we have to treat every system in the body. So, my first step in this evolution of my practice was to integrate a biopsychosocial approach, which means that we ask people about depression, anxiety, stress, catastrophization, somatosensory dysregulation, because we can treat the body all we want. But if their nervous system is wound up in fight or flight, they're never going to get better. And once we integrated that paradigm into our practice, our outcomes were transformed. Then, as my practice evolved more, I'm like, well, you can't really have good pelvic health without good gut health. So that led us down a nutrition direction. So we hired a nutritionist, and then one of my clients said, "You know what, Susan, you got to do more. This is not enough, because when I leave here, I still need to go somewhere else. And I know that you can do it all." So we started full scale wellness programs. So we can't only help people solve their present pain point, but we can help them really continue to feel better long term, forever, throughout every season of life. So I think we have to start looking that way. Not only let's treat your pain or treat your dysfunction or your leaking or your constipation and get you out. No, that work is done. Now let's make sure you're feeling better forever and you know how to manage and maintain that. So it's a
Yeah.
really proactive model, and I think that's really important.
I think that's so, like you said, the paradigm shift, the industry disruptor, because the biopsychosocial,
Yeah.
right? I think that's a piece that's missing, obviously, from like our general experience that we get with a general practitioner for the most part. And I know you state over and over again that your mission is to empower and educate your patients to address that underlying root cause, which is what you were talking
Yeah,
about with that origin site. And I think it's really not just changing people's lives by through the outcomes that you're getting, but it's also changing behavior and it's changing expectation. And when we change expectation from our practitioners, not just from the amazing clinic that you have, but also changing our and elevating our expectations from our providers from all aspects,
yeah.
that's when we start to see systemic change.
Absolutely. And I would even add to that, Kelly, and say we need to start expecting different behaviors from our clients, because clients very often come to us and say, "Well, I just want to get rid of my leaking." And I say, "Well, great, we could get rid of your leaking now, but don't you want to get rid of your leaking forever?" So we have to start educating our clients that they need to be proactive now so that they can feel amazing and travel in every season of life. And I think what you do, Kelly, and you probably, I don't even know if you think about it this way, is such an integral and important part in helping not only people's overall and well-being, but I would even say especially for pelvic health and wellness. So I'm a huge fan, and I'm going to keep dropping hints during this podcast that it would be a great gift for a mom or a grandmother who happens to be doing a podcast right now with the owner. But really, I think it's incredible everything that you're doing.
Thank you. You as well. And so you mentioned just then that someone might come to you and say, I have incontinence or I have leaking. And that could greatly affect someone's ability to travel a long haul flight or a long road trip, or to just feel confident that they can stand in line at a museum and not have to wear adult underwear or whatever. So,
It starts with such simple things, right? Forget about the fear of travel, fear of the car ride to the airport, fear of the lines in the airport. So those fears start to bundle up, and people really, really become isolated. And that's exactly what we don't want.
Raise your hand if you feel anxious before a travel day. I mean, just trying to pack can send even an experienced traveler into a tailspin. And don't even get me started on how nervous I can still feel on an airplane with turbulence or when I'm stuck in large crowds. Whether it's pre travel jitters, travel day anxiety, or destination overwhelm, we have all felt the stress of travel in some way. After traveling all over the world and hosting group retreats in 7 countries, I've experienced all of the highs and lows of travel. Flight delays, natural disasters, lost luggage, toddler tantrums, being stuck in airports overnight, last minute Airbnb cancellations, getting scammed, and so much more. With 17 years of yoga practice under my belt, 7 years of teaching and educating, and over 600 hours of training, I can truly say I've tried it all. I've learned how to apply mindfulness to navigate travel stress with presence and joy and not let those travel mishaps and stress ruin my trip as a whole. Because of my unique experience of blending travel and wellness, I'm here as your trusted co-pilot to help you experience the vacation of your dreams by applying the principles of mindfulness. So I'm so excited to announce today that we've officially launched our latest ebook, The Mindful Traveler: How to Navigate Travel Stress with a Smile. This ebook is jam-packed with practices, strategies, techniques, journal prompts, and so much more. And it was designed to guide you to a more easeful travel experience no matter what happens on the road. There's even a meditation for turbulence and anxious flyers. So download the ebook today at www.transformwithtravel.co, that's .co, and get 10% off your order by using the code LAUNCH10. Embark on a journey of tranquil travels with our new ebook, The Mindful Traveler. You can get it at www.transformwithtravel.co, and be sure to use the code LAUNCH10 for 10% off your order. We'll talk a little bit about like pelvic health and its relation to travel, but as a whole, how do you think, as someone who looks at this whole body approach, this 360-degree holistic approach to health, how do you think that travel has positive benefits on someone's overall health, well-being, and vitality?
Do we have all day? Yeah, I'm just kidding. So, first of all, we all know that evidence based research has shown that social interaction and face to face interactions with other people is imperative for mental health and well being and pelvic health and well being. So, thank goodness we're getting to that place again where people are flying and traveling, because we need to not only create those social interactions and that person to person interactions, but doing new, novel things, new experiences that you've never done before is not only so important for your mental health, it's important for your brain health. It is just so important in nervous system regulation. I would say even mood regulation. I would even go so far to say it's important for sexual health. You know, it creates a new context, a new environment. Can we talk about sex on this podcast?
Absolutely. Let's
Okay,
do
so
it.
what do I always, when I'm teaching sexual wellness, I always say, why do you have better sex when you're on vacation? It's because your nervous system is calmer. Vacation helps to manage stress. It's a new context. It's a new environment. It's exciting. It sort of strips away all of those limiting beliefs and physical symptoms that you have in a familiar environment. And it is so therapeutic, I think, for every system in the body. So I think travel, if possible, should be, even if it's a staycation, should be part of everybody's long-term health plan.
Wow, I love that. I'm going to have to take that quote and put that on our website.
Yeah, please do. And
I love that.
self-care, Kelly. Like,
Mm.
I feel like we all preach it, but we got to make sure we all do it. We have to teach people. Self-care is such a buzzword now, but what does it mean? It could mean different things to different people, and we need to hold people accountable to not only talking the talk, but walking the walk. Because in the end, no one's going to take care of us but ourselves. So we got to get out there, even if it's a staycation, and really take time to create new experiences, new social interactions, and everything we just talked about.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, that self care, because we were both on the Daily Drips podcast, Her Pursuit, and we were talking about how what you do is the long term solution to overall health, whereas what we do with the travel planning and the retreats is kind of that like shot in the arm, like, okay, like this is what we need to do right now. And then you go to Susan for the long term care to make sure that we're integrating what we learned in that on that trip. And what we find is a lot of people come to us, just the everyday professional who's about to get to burnout, who doesn't know how to integrate self care in their daily life because they're so busy in their daily life, that the retreat or the travel experiences affords them the space to think, oh, I have time for a walk in the morning because I have nothing else to do today on this
Right.
vacation. I have time to go try out this new Zumba class at the hotel because I have all this space. So then you have these positive experiences in your body of, wow, that felt really good to put myself first. You get back home from your trip, you realize, oh, daily life just starts ramping up again. And that's why working with someone like yourself or the practitioners in your clinic help them build that self care plan that's beyond the bubble bath and the massage, also important tools, but
Yes.
it's beyond that. And that's what you help, I think, which is so incredible.
Can I share what I kind of had like a daydream while you were talking?
Yeah,
Like I'd
absolutely.
love to share. So as you were talking, we were talking about the shot in the arm and then coming to see us for a life plan. And my dream is that if people do need that shot in the arm, that in the future they learn that they really shouldn't wait until they needed a shot in the arm. And if they
Mm,
do a retreat with you, then when they get home and they have to integrate real life, to start planning your next retreat, because we want to be ahead of the game, one step ahead of that burnout, that level of stress that's going to throw you over the edge. And it really, really is just planning and integrating that into your life. You know, I'm a busy mom, I'm a busy grandmother, I'm a busy entrepreneur. My husband and I do staycations every 2 or 3 months. We will book a hotel in Miami or Weston, somewhere that's close to Boca but not in Boca, and just get away together and reconnect. I don't want to wait until I feel like I'm going to have a nervous breakdown in order to do that. So when we're on one staycation, we already have the next one planned. So I hope people do that with their shot in the arms with you, Kelly. Don't wait until you need a shot in the arm. Go get it, get your reset, but then start booking your next retreat with Kelly.
100%. And that, thank you for that. And what we talk about a lot is sometimes after your first retreat or your first real, like actually restorative vacation, you come back home and real life can feel so jarring. And people ask us a lot about that integration piece and why does it feel like so conflicted to come back home? And we say ultimately, of course, like you said, like those regular retreats, those regular vacations or staycations are important for your overall vitality and health. However, we ultimately want to be creating those insights that you get on that trip or that retreat,
Yeah.
integrate that over time back home so that every time you come home from a vacation or a retreat, it's less and less jarring. The need for integration actually becomes less and less because your daily life reflects your retreat life more and more.
Absolutely. And this is where planning and structure come in a little bit. I am a huge fan of creating a morning routine and a nighttime routine for yourself. I think I've talked about that numerous times, but carving out that time and block scheduling that time for yourself every day will take away that like return to life shock. Because just like I brush my teeth in the morning, Kelly, and just like I brush my teeth at night, I have my morning and my nighttime routine, and nothing's going to take that away. One of the things that I talk about is so that your vacation life and your real life is there's not such a disparity, is to try to stick to your routine somewhat while you're on vacation, even if it's a condensed version of that. I'm not a huge traveler, but when I do go away, I'd like to be, but when I do go away, I do try to stick to my routine as much as I can. Do I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning? No, but if I wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm still doing the same things. I'm getting my early morning sunlight. I'm exercising in the morning. I'm setting myself up with my regular life daily routine so I can feel great and enjoy the rest of my day on vacation.
That's so, I'm glad you said that because I was, as you were talking about routines, I was like, I wonder if she does it on vacation. And then boom, you told us. And I think that's so important for people to realize. I know I talked about this on the podcast before, but there's a researcher and an author, Dr. Alyssa Vitti, and she talks a lot about the fact that your body doesn't know that you're going on vacation. So if you're fairly regimented at home and you wake up every day at 5:30 and you go to sleep mostly around 9 to 10, but then on vacation you throw it in a complete disarray on top of potentially having in a completely different time zone. It's like, how can we maintain a couple of those routines, because our body thrives off of routine. Our
Yes.
brain thrives off of novelty and new, and our
Yeah.
bodies thrive off of routine. So it's like, how can we do the things that we can do to help ourselves maintain that? Because you also don't want to feel like, oftentimes I get from people, I feel so exhausted on vacation, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
you're completely out of your routine, eating different foods, digestion's thrown off,
totally.
probably drinking a little more than you would at home. Like, so it's kind of like, let's
How
take a
many
step
times
back.
have you heard people say, I need a vacation from my vacation, right? That's the
Exactly.
last thing that you want to feel. So, I've listened to a lot of lectures of people that say you should even be waking up the same time while you're on a vacation. If you wake up at 5 at home, you should wake up at 5 on vacation. And I think ultimately you have to take those little bits of advice and make them your own. I will tell you, I'm not waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm on vacation, but I'm still going through the structure of my routine. And yes, I could not agree with you more. Your brain loves new experiences. Your body wants to be like a bowel movement,
Yeah.
routine and regular. I always say my favorite part of my life is being like a bowel movement, routine and regularity.
Yep. I love that. That's another quote for the website. I love that. So, okay, we talked a bit about, the benefits of travel and all the goodness that can happen physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationship wise, but also from a physical standpoint, the actual act of traveling, like long haul travel, long days on the road, it can be taxing physically and sometimes mentally on the body. What are some of your top tips for staying healthy on the road, maybe outside of those routines? Like, what are things that you would be doing to make sure that, like you said, your digestion's on point, your sleep's on point? Like, what would you be
Right.
doing from like a strategy and technique point of view?
That's a great question. I love that question because I actually have a lot of clients, they'll be like, oh, I won't go to this destination because it's 12 hours away. And I think it's all about setting yourself up for success and modifying the modifiables. So, one of the greatest things I learned from one of my mentors, Susan Clinton, is your best position is your next one. Just practically, if you're on a road trip or you're on a plane, constantly change positions intuitively, even if you can't get into out of the car, which you should be making stops every hour or two at most. Move your body, roll your neck, roll your shoulders, do ankle pumps, do trunk rotations. That is the best thing that you can do, is just keep moving. Try not to be in the same position for too long. That's one thing that I tell people. The other thing, again, is just set yourself up for success. Stay hydrated. Hydration is the easiest thing you can do to optimize your health. Thank God most of us have access to clean water, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes people are like, I don't have time to drink. I'm like, that's bullshit. Come on. I feel like we can all drink. And if there's no water where we are at the moment, we can plan for that. So I would definitely say stay hydrated. My easy, quick, and go to guideline for that is drink half your body weight of water in ounces. Also, just in terms of bowel and bladder, one of the things that I hear the most about travel is constipation.
Mm.
So, again, we have to plan for that. And if you know that you do become constipated, and it is very common while you travel, your circadian rhythm may be off, your routine may be off, your diet may be changing. Plan ahead for that. Make sure that you're eating lots of fiber. Make sure that you're bringing golden ground flax with you on vacation. I have all these little baggies with my golden ground flax and my psyllium husk. And it's just really staying ahead of the game and not allowing yourself to get into that position where now you have to start undoing things. It's
Mm,
all about being proactive. Another thing that I hear a lot about, and this applies whether you're on a plane or in a car or on a bike, is bladder issues. A lot of people travel and again, they're not hydrated, especially on planes. I once had a client who was a pilot and he said for every hour that you're in the air, you need an extra 8 ounces of water to keep yourself
wow.
hydrated. So I thought,
Wow.
yeah, I thought that was such an interesting tip. But we do drink more. We drink more alcohol on vacations, hopefully not when you're driving, but that's another reason to stay hydrated. Bring some aloe with you. They have great dehydrated aloe capsules now that coat the bladder and make it feel less irritated. If you are going to drink alcohol, be mindful about it. Make controlled decisions. Don't let yourself get out of control, but then perhaps eliminate other bladder irritants such as carbonation, acidic foods, a lot of caffeine, which hopefully you shouldn't need when you're on vacation. But again, you want to modify the modifiables and make sure that you're staying ahead of the game. Did I answer your
Okay.
question, Kelly?
I mean, yes, and more. I loved it. And so the bladder irritation piece, can you talk a little bit about what like symptoms that might relate to or what somebody might be coming to you with? And then you'd be like, yeah, that's because there's irritation there.
Yes. So I would say it's three things: urgency, frequency, and leaking.
Ooh, okay.
So, yeah, the lining of our bladder is lined with stretch receptors. And urination is actually a reflex. People don't realize that our bladder is not under our voluntary control. We don't have control of whether our bladder contracts, voluntary control. It's a nervous system loop. Another reason to stay calm. Symptoms of urgency and frequency, by the way, are very, very often automated by the nervous system. So,
Mm,
if you have urgency and frequency, you want to kind of take a look at the stress levels in your life. But urgency and frequency would be one of them. Leaking would be another. Again, when things like that happen, it means that your bladder is controlling you. You are not controlling your bladder, and it's probably trying to protect you because it's sensing something in there that's irritating. It wants to protect you, and it's saying, let me get whatever's in there out. So if there's a pathogen in there, to get it out. But that's something that we can control, right? We have to make sure that we're hydrating, we're controlling our bladder irritants, that we are not peeing just in case all the time, right?
mm,
We have a tendency to say, I'm just going to pee because I'm going on a podcast with Kelly, or I'm going to pee because I'm going to Publix. That peeing just in case, especially when we're on vacation, right? Whoop, we're going to our next destination. I'm going to pee just in case. We're going to go into the restaurant for dinner on vacation. We're going to pee just in case. And that trains your bladder to give you a more frequent signal. The
wow.
other thing we don't want to do is have a camel bladder. We want to make sure that when we are getting that strong urge to go to the bathroom, we're honoring that. Because, I can tell you, I've had so many people that have gone on 12, 14-hour flights and they don't want to pee on the plane. So they're
Wow.
holding their bladder for 12 to 14 hours at a time. Again, that might be another thing that we need to prepare for, is bringing sanitary gel or the wipes for the toilet seat. But we want to honor the urge to go to the bathroom because we want to keep that balance and those signals of the brain bladder loop and pelvic floor all working in perfect synchronicity.
That's incredible. That you just had so many light bulb moments for a couple of my family members where I'm like, you were saying things that people do. I'm like, I'm going to send this episode to them.
Right. I want to add
So
one more thing, Kelly, because people
yeah,
don't think about this. And my passion is educating and being on these podcasts so everybody has access to this information because it's foundational. But when someone tells me that they have bladder urgency, frequency, and leaking, the first question I ask them is how their bowels are, because constipation can be a root cause for these things. So again, there is so many modifiable things that we can do to set ourselves up for success.
I love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I want to touch on something that's related to bladder, but something that a lot of people struggle with like you mentioned, some people won't go 12 hours away because it's a 12-hour time difference or whatever it might be. There's the portion of health which is like so controlled by the quality of our sleep.
Hmm.
And we can go into all the tips about how to, retrain our circadian rhythm to match the time zone that we're in. There's
Yeah.
loads of tips out there, but I want to talk about specifically, our kidneys and our bladders are on their own kind of time cycle. And so
Hmm.
when we're trying to go to sleep, let's say 6 hours away or 7 hours away, our bladder doesn't quite know yet, our kidneys don't quite know yet that it's time for us to hold instead of time for us to go. Can you talk about like that system? Because a lot of people get woken up a million times in the night because they have to pee and they're like, but this doesn't happen at home. I don't wake up to pee at home. I want to talk about that a little bit.
So I happen to think you're brilliant because that's a brilliant question that I don't think anybody's asked me in terms of does our bladder have to acclimate to sleep? And what I will say is that we have been designed as humans to be so efficient. Our functioning of our bodies is mind-blowingly brilliant. So I guess the first thing I would ask them is, are they really waking up because they got the urge to pee, or are they going to pee because they woke up? So first thing, because a lot of people are in an unfamiliar bed. I personally, last time I went on vacation, I took my own pillow with me because I hate hotel pillows. If I have to sleep on a hotel pillow, I'm not sleeping well, and chances
Mm,
are if I'm not sleeping well, I'm thinking about my bladder more. And when you're not sleeping as well, your body cannot make a hormone that we make when we are sleeping called antidiuretic hormone. So we really should not, our bladders and our kidneys, I think intuitively and hormonally will be regulated if we modify the modifiables and really try to get that optimal sleep. Again, I would think I would ask that person many questions to really ascertain, is it their bladder and the kidneys? Because if it is, then we want to address that. But my guess is that it's probably the fact that they're not sleeping well. They're not getting good, deep sleep, which we know is imperative for everything, every system in the body. But that's really my feeling about that, is that when we are in a good deep sleep, we make antidiuretic hormone so we don't have to wake up a million times in the night. But if we are waking up, are we waking up and then peeing, or is the urge waking us up? Do we need to work on our circadian rhythm a little bit, or has this become patterning?
mm,
Sometimes, have you ever woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then the next day you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then, oh God, suddenly you're waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning every day? Our bladder is a trainable organ. So we need to make sure that we are the trainers.
right.
Did that
I
answer
feel
your
like,
question?
yeah, I was like, have you been watching me the last 3 nights? Because literally 2:35 on the dot for 3 nights straight. I'm like, this is not happening.
Right.
So let's say someone's going to London or Spain or somewhere that's, 5, 6, 7 hour time difference away. What would be some of your top tips to then, okay, now that we understand the difference between the bladder and the kidneys versus the quality of sleep, what would, if you were going to Europe or somewhere that it will disrupt your circadian rhythm quite a bit, what would be your go-to to help ensure that you are getting on track for that time zone circadian rhythm? And then perhaps like that integration of then coming back home would be, I'm sure, similar strategies as well.
So I travel to Israel a lot, which is a different time zone. They're 7 hours ahead. It's a 12-hour flight. And I think the most important thing is to immediately try to acclimate into that time zone and circadian rhythm without disrupting yours as much as possible. So, for example, when I go to Israel, which is a 12-hour flight again, I will, what time is the flight? How much would I normally sleep during the flight? And if I'm getting there at 7 o'clock a.m. their time, I will try to stay up, maybe catch a little nap during the day, but try to get into the rhythm of that time zone as quickly as possible so that my body can acclimate in a sort of like a smooth transition instead of sleeping during the day and then you're all messed up. But I think that's the most important thing. And if we are proactive about our health and our bladder and our bowels, it'll come right along with us.
This episode is brought to you by Bite and Coffee. Many of you know that my husband is Australian and I lived in Oz for 5 years. I knew when I moved back home I would miss the incredible Australian cafe culture. And then lucky for me, Bite and Coffee opened in my own hometown. Bite and Coffee is owned by the absolute best couple from Down Under, Dan and Kat, who moved to America with the dream of opening up a true blue Aussie cafe. Bite and Coffee offers up the best coffee, Aussie meat pies, sausage rolls, delicious sandwiches, and homemade pastries and desserts. They also have fun community events like trivia, karaoke, expat nights, and more. If you're living or visiting in South Florida, be sure to check out Bite and Coffee, located in Lighthouse Point. That's BYTE and Coffee, located in Lighthouse Point. Yeah, so true. I've heard a lot of advice around getting outside as soon as you can when you
Yes,
land in your new time zone
yes.
because of the blue spectrum of the light
Yes,
helps.
I love that, and that's part of my morning routine. It seems so automatic to me that I forgot to
Right.
say it, but sunlight, will bottom out melatonin, right, is gonna make us sleepy and start triggering that nighttime cycle, and adenosine is that what happens we want that to bottom out in the morning. So, and the light can help modulate that circadian rhythm. So we really, really wanna take advantage of that and be out in the sunlight as much as possible. But yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I know it's so funny when things are like so ingrained in your routine or your health, you like forget that's like a mind-blowing tip that you just shared.
Yeah.
I remember we flew from LA to Singapore with my two young girls last year, so they were 3 and 15 months, and we landed I think it was super late at night. It was like 1 a.m. So we let everyone sleep for a couple hours until the girls woke up. And then we just immediately, it was rainy and gross. I was like, I don't care. We're going outside. And we just walked for like 4 or 5 hours outside, and they transitioned better than we did with the
Right.
circadian, like they fell asleep and stayed asleep, so there's something definitely to it, like
Kids are
getting outside.
so resilient,
So
and
resilient.
adapt so easily. But yeah, anytime we travel, we put our bags down. We don't even unpack because I know if I'm near that bed too
It's
long,
sleepy time.
going to sleep. We go out, we start exploring, and the adrenaline of that will also help you to acclimate to the new time zone.
Oh, I love that. The even like the considering like the adrenaline and like being in a new spot and you're 100% absorbed where you are, that takes up a lot of energy, which will then help you sleep
Yeah.
later. So I never thought about that. Thank
It
you.
takes more energy and more integration, right? Our brain could really only do one thing at a time. We think we could multitask, but we can't. So if your
What?
brain
Are you
is,
serious?
yes, I know, I hate to
Don't
like,
tell me that.
I hate to rock your world. Well, maybe we can multitask, but we can't do it well.
Not
So,
well, nope.
if we take up that real estate up here about like, oh, let's go explore this place and what direction do I have to go in? Do I make a right or a left? You will immediately start to see that you're much less focused on fatigue if you have it. But I love that you pointed out that, when I said it's so automatic to me, I do my morning routine outside every day barefoot. So I feel like I don't even think about grounding anymore. I actually have to think of the steps because I've integrated it into such an automatic routine for myself that it's not effortful anymore.
Yeah, totally. And then it would make it easier to do it while you're on vacation because
Yeah.
it's just a part of who you are. I love
Yeah.
that. So, the last little piece that I'd love to touch on is we spoke about a couple things that you could do. You know, you talked about like the twists and then a couple neck rolls and a couple ankle pumps when you're sitting for a long period of time. Could you touch on how travel and sitting for long periods of time and, just kind of like being out of your routine, like how that affects pelvic health and maybe some techniques or poses that people can do? Like, I'm thinking we're going to be sitting for 3.5 hours to Costa Rica on Saturday. Like, I'm going to have a child on my lap, but I can probably still do a couple things while I'm sitting. If she's sleeping on me, I'm not getting up.
Right,
I'm going to let her sleep. So
right,
what could I do? This is like my own personal like little session right here. What
right,
could I do if I had a child sleeping on me for 4 hours straight and I can't get up? What could I do to help maintain that pelvic health while I'm sitting?
right. So the number one thing is your breath. That
Mm.
is your pelvic health starts as soon as you take a breath into your lungs. Your breath cycle is actually what modulates your that length tension relationship in your pelvic floor. When we inhale and those lungs fill with air, that kind of increases pressure in your abdominal cavity. It pushes everything down and your pelvic floor relaxes, broadens, and lengthens. So
Mm.
think about the inhalation phase as almost like a stretch for the pelvic floor. And then you exhale, that air is let out of your lungs, and everything from the bottom up contracts, engages, shortens, recoils. So just taking a conscious, deliberate, and intuitive diaphragmatic breath is going to be the best thing to help your pelvic health. So do not underestimate the power and the magic of breath. Now, I can go into how to really use your breath to help you with certain symptoms, but I don't think that's within the scope of this podcast. But what I would also say, aside from the breath, is that we're always talking about balance in musculoskeletally and in life. So if you we want to think about counterbalancing a position that we're in, right? We do that in yoga all the time. If
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
are in child's pose, we counterbalance with cobra. If we are, doing one thing, we'll counterbalance with another thing. So if your child is sleeping on you and you are in hip extension for 2 hours, you want to do something to create a little bit of hip flexion. I was in a course this weekend and we were sitting for a very long time. So I kind of got up and went to the back of my chair and kind of sunk in standing to create hip extension because I was bent the entire day. So I wanted to create length.
Mm.
So, another great thing that you could do is even if your child is sleeping on you, it actually may put them into a deeper sleep, is just pelvic tilts, pelvic rocks, pelvic rolls. I would say move intuitively and breathe. Breathing is by far the most important thing you can do for your pelvic health. And I would say breath holding is probably can be, except in certain situations, can be detrimental to your pelvic health. Does that answer your
Mm.
question, Kelly?
Yeah, and I think that's so cool because we talk a lot about. I have an ebook out called The Mindful Traveler, but really about how to navigate the stress and the anxiety that travel can bring and how to turn that into something a little more easeful while you're traveling. And we talk a lot about breath, especially around the fear of flying or fear of, kind of being contained in your seat, especially when you have kids. Like, what do I do? And we talk about breath as such a powerful tool to guide you through that. So it's kind of like a two for one. You're down regulating your nervous system and calming down and being present in your body. And at the same time, you're totally impacting your pelvic health in a way that's so simple and free and so easy.
Absolutely. You know what people always ask me is, how should I be breathing? And what I always say is, there is no bad breath. There are different breaths for different purposes. And I
Right.
personally have an arsenal of breathing strategies that I can do anywhere in any position to help create an outcome in my body that I would like. So I would tell everybody while you're traveling, create your own little arsenal, your own little toolbox of breath strategies to help enhance your experience.
Totally. Could you share like your one favorite? I know you have a million favorites probably, but like what would be your go-to if you had a long haul flight and there was some turbulence or something and you started to get a little anxious? Like what would be your one favorite? And you can even walk us through it if you
Yeah,
want, but whatever you want.
That's like an easy one for me.
Okay.
I have so many. And we could do, honestly, we could do
It could
a
be a
whole
whole nother.
podcast
Let's do
just
it. That's
on
where you,
breath because
yes.
I could literally, for 45 minutes, just talk about different breath strategies and their purposes. But when I am feeling a little wound up, my favorite one is alternate nostril breathing. I'm
Right.
happy to talk you through it if you
Let's do
want me
it.
to.
Sure.
So, what I do, and it's a little hard to do it while I'm talking, but I'll just pretend I put one finger over each nostril. I usually start by covering my right nostril and inhaling through my left. Cover up the left, let the right loose, exhale, and then inhale. Good. Cover up, switch sides, exhale, and then inhale. Cover up, switch sides, exhale, and then inhale. And ideally, you want to do that for a few minutes, but I can tell you if you just take a couple minutes to do it, the results are like instantaneous. I take my fingers,
Mm,
you might look a little weird, but who cares? Your nervous system will be brought down to a whole new level, and you don't need space, you don't need equipment. All you need is your breath.
yeah. And you don't even need your headphones like
Yeah.
to listen to a guided meditation. It's
Yeah,
just
no.
right
How did that
there.
feel for you, Kelly?
Oh, amazing. I mean, you just feel like when you do let your hand away, as if like just very calm and centered. And in
Right.
yogic philosophy, this is called Nadi Shodhana, and it talks about bringing the right and left sides of the body, the Ida and Pingala channels. It kind of like starves the duality of the two sides to
Mhm.
bring your awareness to Sushumna, which is your central
Yes,
channel.
yes,
So you know all about
yes.
it
I
too.
was
But
about to say, I feel like when you tap into that duality for a few minutes and then you stop, it's almost like it brings you right to that third eye, and you feel so much more centered, so much more present, so much more engaged. So I encourage everybody to give it a try.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so to finish off the episode, I always finish with these three questions. But before we do that, I wanted to see if there was any last little nugget of wisdom or any encouragement or anything you'd like to share with our listeners.
Well, I think the most important takeaway that I would love people to walk away with is set yourself up for success. Plan a little bit and then also modify the modifiables. You can do this. It's not that hard. And go ahead and create novel, new experiences that are joyful. It's the best thing that you can do for your health and wellness and mental well being.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Of
Susan.
course,
So
that's the short list.
I know, right? You're like, do you want me to keep that could be a whole nother podcast episode too. So we would definitely get you back on and we'll do a whole breathing episode. I would love that. But to end the episode, we do with these three questions. Then the first question is what country or place has made the biggest impact on you?
Well, I feel like I have to say two because my natural go to is Israel. I go to Israel all the time. I've lived in Israel. I have a daughter that lives there, and I will tell you, for me, when I step out of the plane, my soul feels elevated.
Mm,
It brings me to another level spiritually because that's what Israel does for me. But on a different, in a different way, Costa Rica was had a huge impact on me. The people, the connection to the topography and the diversity in the topography, was the freshness of the fruit. It was just incredible. When I think about somewhere where I'd want to go back, it always Costa Rica.
yeah, and it's a little bit closer than Israel, so you can
Yes,
kind of get there a little faster.
yes, yes.
Amazing. And number two is what's your go-to travel accessory or your go-to like must-have item when you're traveling?
Can I say water?
Yeah.
I
Yes,
mean,
it's
I
easy.
know it sounds easy, but I will tell you what I bring. I always, we have a routine. As soon as we get through security, we each get a bottle of water. And then as soon as we get our destination, we go to some local market and get a case of water to have in in our place that we're staying in case we can't drink the local water. But my non-negotiable other things that I bring with me is a bottle of a great magnesium complex, because
Mm.
it helped with bowel, bladder, sleep, nervous system regulation, and fiber. So it's super easy. It doesn't have to be complicated. Hydrate. That's the key
Hydrate.
for me. And my sneakers.
Oh yeah. Gotta have good sneakers.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's a good thing that sneakers are kind of like back in fashion because we can
Yeah.
get away with wearing them everywhere we go. So,
Mhm.
and then the last one is, what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned while traveling?
Be proactive, plan, and roll with it. I feel like sometimes traveling is the best lesson for sort of like man plans and God laughs, right?
Yeah, right.
And the more you can roll with that, the more resilient you are, the less it impacts the enjoyment of your trip. So I think for me, that's what it is, because I am like a bowel movement. I love routine and regularity. And when I lose control of that and things don't go the way I planned them to be, I used to get a little bit out of control. And now I'm like, I'm on vacation. I get to, sit in an airport next to my husband or whoever I'm with for another hour. So just stay chill. That's what I've
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah, it's like what you said, like modify the modifiables, plan for what you can plan for, but also lean into the lesson of letting go where you
Yeah.
can.
Oh my gosh, that was so much more eloquent than the way I said it.
No, no, I was just rephrasing.
And others here on the podcast is my personal Kelly AI. I say it and Kelly reframes it in a much more
Oh my
eloquent
God.
way.
Oh no, you're so funny. Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today, for giving us your time. I know that our audience, our listeners, are going to take so much from this conversation. I personally am going on a flight in 4 days, and I'm already thinking about how I can modify the modifiables
Love
and
that.
really be able to elevate my well-being while I'm on the road. So, how can people connect with you, either online or also those listening who are living in South Florida, how they can connect with you in
Yes.
person?
So our health and wellness center, our pelvic health and wellness center is in Boca. We are everywhere. If you look us up, we're called Pelvic Core Rehab and Wellness. We're on Instagram at Pelvic Core Rehab and Wellness. Our website is pelvicorerehabandwellness.com. We're on Facebook, Susan Winograd at Pelvic Core Rehab and Wellness. We're on LinkedIn. Just type our name in and we should come up. We have a really robust YouTube channel called Pelvicore Plus. I have a podcast called Your Pelvic Health. So that information is out there. We're trying to make it accessible. Just reach out. And I love hearing from people. Our office number is 561-295-1631, or email us at pelvicorerehab@gmail.com. I love hearing from people. I'm a connector. I love talking to people.
I love that. And I'll link all of that in the show notes too, so
Thank
everyone
you.
can go check that out.
Thank
Well,
you. And
thank you,
Kelly,
thank you,
I
thank you.
adore you. I absolutely love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I can't wait for this to air. Everyone listening, thank you so much for being here today, and we will see you on another episode. All right. How did we feel after this episode? Oh my gosh. I could talk to Susan all day long. And luckily I get to, because we're in the same networking group together. I get to see her all the time. So if you want a part 2 with Susan, let me know. Drop me a line. For those who have stayed all the way through to the end of the episode, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I am now here to share a review, a testimonial from a client of mine who recently got back from a trip to Ireland. They actually did a couple weeks in Norway and then ended the trip in Ireland for the Florida State football game that was in Dublin. And she wrote about her experience working with me on her trip from start to end. And her name is Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. She says, our booking experience with Kelly was smooth from beginning to end. Kelly made every effort to understand what our preferences were for accommodations and experiences. She followed up with both the hotel and us prior to our arrival. She booked our massage and spa time. Kelly's knowledge of the Killarney area, which is in Ireland, was helpful in planning our itinerary. We highly recommend Kelly as your travel advisor for stress-free planning. So thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. I am open for any trips that you're interested in planning in 2025. I have a couple spots left. I only take one client per month. So if you're planning on traveling in March, I have a slot open in March, and so on and so forth. So reach out to me if you would like to book a trip with me, and we can see where we go from there. I'm here to be your one-stop shop to remind you to get out there and keep on exploring. So I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Transform with Travel podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of inspiration, adventure, and exploration. If you felt inspired by this episode, please rate and review in whatever streaming app you're listening from. This allows us to spread the word even more and continue to serve up weekly doses of adventure. As always, we'd love if you could share the episode with someone in your life who you think will benefit from this conversation. Thanks so much for listening. This is your reminder to get out there and keep on exploring.